Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks! What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another discussion topic to share with you guys. We're going to be talking about how important lock strength is in your day-to-day life. Now, obviously, lock strength is important in a general sense, right? But it definitely depends on the type of person you are. This is part of kind of a long series of discussion topics that's aimed at people coming into the knife world, newer people not quite understanding, right? They watch a video, they ask a question in the comment section, and inevitably there's the guy who jumps in going, just get a cold steel triad lock, bro, it's the strongest lock. It probably is, but unfortunately that's not really helping that person. What it is it's chopping away, you know, all of these other potential avenues that might work better for that person, and just suggesting one thing that is just overkill in terms of strength, maybe, for that person. So we're going to talk about that today. Just so everybody knows, I am a cold steel fan. I've got locks out here, a lot of different types. Some of them are stronger than others. I'm going to talk about why they might make sense for some people, why they might not make sense for other people. Thanks so much to my generous patrons for supporting me right now. If you guys are enjoying the daily knife content on this channel and you'd like to support this channel, there is a link for my Patreon right down in the description. You can get your hands on some cool stickers and other benefits. And please follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. So we've got a bunch of different lock types out here today. We've got the basic back lock. We have the compression lock from Spyderco, right? We're going to talk about all these in more detail. We have, of course, the cold steel triad lock. I've got a couple of different frame locks out here, titanium frame locks. Rick Hinder XM18. By the way, a lot of this stuff can be found at the retailers that I link right down in the description. We've got the SNG. This is actually it's an automatic knife, but it's a button lock or plunge lock, which is what's commonly used there. We have a sub titanium liner lock, right, milled into the frame. We have whatever lock they're using on the Lightning OTF, which is good enough for the OTF, right? We have Axis style locks. This is actually referred to as the Able lock. Very similar to what Benchmade uses. In fact, I mean, come on, it's the same thing, right? We have the much stronger version of the the OTF lock, right, versus the Lightning. The lock on the Microtech Combat Troodon or most Microtech knives is going to be substantially stronger. It just is. It's going to be the way that it hooks up. We have the ring lock on the Opinel. This is actually an Opinel number 9. We have a simple liner lock, like what I use on my Rat. And then we have a more robust version of the frame lock. This is just a thicker, this is the XM24, just a thicker version, the titanium frame lock. And then we have the brand new Shark lock from Andrew Demko. Andrew Demko invented the triad lock. This is essentially a one-handed, it's able to be manipulated with one hand. And we don't really know yet, but it might actually be about as strong as the triad lock, right? So there's a lot of different locks out here for a lot of different knives. I've actually talked about this before in another video where I discuss, what's the best lock, right? It's another discussion topic. This is kind of an extension of that video. I'm going to tell you guys the knife out on the table that I have used the hardest for the most ridiculous stuff, right? The most non-knife stuff and, knife stuff is honestly, it's the Ontario Rat. This knife has been through it. It has been used as a hammer. It has definitely been used as a pry bar. It's been resharpened multiple times. The tip is gone. I don't know if you guys can see. Yeah. Excuse me. The tip is gone. This thing is it's not centered right now, but it's not rubbing, and it's locking up something like 70%. It's completely and totally solid. Now I don't I haven't put this thing in a vise and tried to beat on it, right? I haven't hammered it in between two blocks of cement but what I did do with it, I'll tell you, the prying stuff that I did, I have definitely used it to pry up shingles in a pinch up on a roof, and actually we were taking apart a bunch of cubicles one time in an old, it was a call center that was going to be knocked down, and they had to take the pieces of the cubicles apart. This was years ago. Well, it was a year and a half ago. And the latches that were holding the padded parts onto the cubicle were not coming off, and I realized there was a metal, another metal piece underneath, so I was jamming this thing down in there and prying. Now, I would say I was putting that knife through about 70% of what it was capable of, but it was impressive. It was actually to the point where I could feel the blade flexing a little bit, and I thought, I'm going to do the rat in today. Nope, totally fine. Kept going, right? The issue, that some people point out with like a liner lock is that it fully depends on really, really good lock geometry. Same way with a titanium frame lock. The lock geometry has to be really, really good so that while you're doing these weird cuts where you might accidentally be putting pressure on the spine, it doesn't slip and close on your finger, right? Now, the rat is a $40 knife, and the lock face is just fine. It's always been dependable, right? So that's all the more lock that I really need. I found that, any lock that's going to provide me with additional strength, right? Somebody who really just uses knives on a day-to-day basis for simple stuff, right? Cutting open boxes, packages. It's only periodically that I'm actually using a knife for something, extra. And in that situation, I actually did have tools that would work better. But I was standing there, we were trying to pull it apart. My toolbox was, I don't know, maybe 20 feet from me, and it was just easier for me in the moment to pull my knife out and go, let's see if I can get this apart with my knife, right? Most of the time, you're probably going to have, if you're doing something that's going to require specific tools, you're probably going to have a more specific tool near you. And if you don't, I'm not sure what it is you're doing, what situation it is that you're in, right? But there are times where maybe a lock with a little bit more strength might make sense for some people. But that's me, basically. Those are my usage habits. Periodically needing a knife for something, a little bit extra. The truth is that, compared to a liner lock, right, every lock out here, right, the liner lock is arguably one of the weakest locks out here. I think maybe some people might say, well, the plunge lock, right, well, maybe the ring lock. And honestly, I don't know about the ring lock. I mean, it's pretty secure, but we have a, in this case, it's going to depend on the geometry of the materials. We have a pretty thin ring of steel and a pretty thin blade. I imagine it'll hold up super well. I'm going to guess the lock that holds the lightning in place is probably not going to be super duper strong. But again, you think about what you're going to use the knife for. You're only really going to need excess durability, or really, have to be concerned with any excess durability in the lock if you plan on pounding this blade into a hard surface. Most of the pressure is going to come here on the blade, right? So the back of the knife is braced up against the aluminum frame. So is it the lock you really need to be concerned about, right? What I'm getting at, the point that I'm getting at here is that it's not, how strong is the lock. A lot of people will base the entirety of, the knife's value on how durable the thing is, how durable the lock is, right? Let me tell you something. Let me help you out here. If all you're concerned with is how much you're going to pay, right, versus how durable the lock is, how durable the knife is overall, you want that cost to durability ratio. Here you go. Let me end your hunt right now. The Cold Steel SR1 Lite. This is a $60 knife. It is ridiculously thick. It has a massive triad lock. Here you go. That's it. Oh, we're all done. Any of the Cold Steel Light series knives that use the triad lock, right? That's the idea there, is maxing out the durability to cost ratio. And that's great. But, those of you who are pure users, or just, people who really obsess over stuff like that, you have to understand that the knife world is packed to capacity with people who care more about other elements of knives besides that. If that's the only thing that's important to you, then great, right? But it does not mean that the rest of every last little detail about all these other things that go into knives should be ignored. I've argued this many times. I'm going to argue it today. I think the Cold Steel Triad lock is probably the strongest lock in existence, but I think it is so absolutely overkill on a knife that you'll break every other part of this knife, even this massively robust blade. You'll break every other part of this knife before you break the lock, right? So, at that point, you just have a, you just have a functional triad lock and just a shard of metal and some plastic, right? But honestly, I think the same thing is true for a lot of these locking systems. I think with the compression lock on the Shaman, I think another crucial part of the blade that's more likely to break before the lock is maybe the tip, right? It's also possible, even though I think it's unlikely, the blade will actually fracture at its weakest point, which is actually in that hole, right? A lot of these locks are still, with the XM24, I don't think that the frame lock, right? Here's a lot of people do. They go, the XM24 is $600, right? I can get a cold steel SR1 light that's the same size and it's probably stronger for 60 bucks, right? If you're new, you're going to hear comments like that. Understand this. What those people are not telling you, or what they don't understand, is that the XM24 is not trying to, or Rick Hinder is not trying to sell the XM24 as the absolute most durable product, the absolute most durable knife, right, in any extreme circumstance. Not at all. And nor is strength or durability of the lock or the item itself the, equivalent to the total value of things, right? Knives are not measured in value by their strength or durability or lock strength. In this case, we have an XM24 that is extremely durable, and we have a cold steel SR1 light that is more extremely durable. Obviously not proper English, right? This guy isn't made out of premium materials. It'll do the job. This guy is. This caters more to the enthusiast and at the same time offers more than enough durability in any, conceivable circumstance you might get into with a knife than the average person might need. Even considering how robust and insane this blade is, I could not imagine. It would take such an extreme amount of inhuman force to get this this frame lock to fail, right? A lot of people talk about, slippage is a problem with frame locks. Rick Hinder knives, for the amount of money that you're going to pay, a lot of what that goes into, a lot of what goes into these knives is making sure that things like lock face geometry is solid. There's a lot of surface contact. You could bang on the back of this all day. The truth is to get that lock to disengage, the only way you're going to be able to do it is by doing some odd cut and accidentally pushing on the lock bar at the same time, right? Same could be said in a weird situation with the triad lock. While you're cutting, for whatever reason, if you're pushing on that lock and you disengage it, it's just not going to happen. There's another part of the knife that's going to fail before the lock, right? So comparing these two locks, the triad lock versus the frame lock on the XM24, if both take an inhuman amount of force to, cause the lock to fail, then any excess durability, doesn't matter how much more, like, well, this takes one anvil and this takes 3 anvils. Well, I'm not going to drop an anvil on the lock. So it doesn't matter, right? Value is not measured by the durability of the lock. Value is measured by cost of manufacturing, origin of manufacturing, or country of origin, right? Materials used, how complicated the grind is, how complicated the frame is, right? The chassis on an OTF is going to cost more to make than the frame of a folding knife, right? There's so much more that goes into that. So don't let anybody convince you that value is entirely, just because a knife is a tool, right? Don't let anybody tell you that the item's value is 100% based on durability or lock strength. For some people, that will be true. Some people will, if I can imagine some people, who maybe are out, constantly, like if you want an example of somebody who the triad lock is made for, because I've really been coming down on this today, and I like the triad lock. I think it's awesome. But I suppose somebody who is constantly outside, doing things outside all the time, right? And you're not gonna, people who are doing a lot of like hiking, or their job requires them to travel long distances in the outdoors, to do, I'm not describing a very common percentage of the population. I'm describing a very small percentage of the population, right? But in some situations, I could imagine where having a large folding knife on you, you get the convenience. A lot of people want to go, just get a fixed blade. Just get a fixed blade. In some situations, you might actually want something that is lighter, but at the same time still really, really durable. Maybe not as durable as a fixed blade, right? But maybe the task that you're going to use the knife for doesn't call for something as cumbersome and as durable as a fixed blade. So having something like this that is robust and folds and is very, very durable might be beneficial for a wide variety of different tasks. I don't think Cold Steel specifically says they want you to go out and baton with your knife, but if I was going to baton with a folding knife, I would do it with this, right? Now, those of you who find that interesting, right, remember that 99% of us who are interested in cold steel knives, including myself, are not going to ever use those knives for those types of tasks. We just think they're cool, and there's nothing wrong with that. I actually periodically carry this guy. and do nothing else with it other than just open boxes. I'm perfectly okay admitting that. I will never put that thing through its paces. I'll go out and use it, I'll go out and beat on it hard, but I'm never going to need the full strength of that triad lock. Never going to need it. The truth is that for myself and for, 99% of the people watching my channel, any one of these locks is going to be plenty durable for you if you are using your knife the way that a knife was intended to be used. If you ask yourself, how often do I use a tamping hammer to drive my blade, right? To beat on the spine and drive my blade into material? What is it that I'm doing where that is the most efficient way to complete said task, right? If you find yourself, I can imagine me finding myself in a situation maybe once or twice in my entire life where that was, this is what I've got to do, right? So in those situations, maybe the lock on that knife was just good enough to make that work. But if you're finding yourself in those kinds of situations all the time, right? If you find yourself on a day-to-day basis where you're like, I need the strength of that triad lock because I am constantly putting pressure on the wrong place, right, when it comes to the blade. And most of what I do with my knife is not simple cutting tasks because any of these will do that, right? Most of what I do with a knife is use it for all sorts of crazy stuff, right? My knife is a diving board. It's a boat anchor. It's a grappling hook, right? It's a, it's a pry bar. It's a hammer. You need to get some more tools. You need to have different tools that you use in different situations. I understand, the feeling of preparedness, having the, a tool on you that can do a lot of different things, and that's great. But most of that stuff, even, the stuff that we convince ourselves that we need that excess strength for, most of that stuff can actually be, I found that what I thought I would need the triad lock for, the Rat, which is not a thick blade, and it's just using a liner lock, this thing is actually plenty durable for that. I've never, ever had an issue with that guy. Now, different knives are going to be, capable of different things, but as far as what I use the Rat for, right, prying up the shingles, prying up the nails, prying apart that, that metal thing with the padding on it that was holding this cubicle together, right? Those metal parts. Do I think I could do that with all the rest of the knives out here? I don't know that I'd try it with this guy. And the blade out here, I'm looking at the geometry. I'm not so concerned with the lock with some of these. I'm concerned with the geometry of the blade. That guy's a little thin. I definitely wouldn't try it with the Open L, right? The rest of these, yeah, no problem. I don't have an issue with any of that, right? Especially, like the new, the Demco 8020, which I will find any excuse to talk about. This is essentially a luxury, fidgety version of the triad lock, and then it is housed in titanium, and the blade is 20 CV, and it is insanely robust. In fact, I think it is actually as robust as the SR1, except the SR1, can we focus? The camera's like, no, we're just looking at the stuff behind the knife. Come on now. Really? There we go. Can we turn slowly? Yeah. No, still doesn't want to do it. Well, anyways, yeah, the Demco is just as robust as the SR1, except the Demco is made out of 20 CV. A lot of the durability in your knife is going to come from the materials used. Not saying that, there are a lot of circumstances where titanium is going to be necessary over, like FRN on this guy. But 8CR 13 MOV steel versus 20 CV steel, right? And the geometry of it, the heat treat of it, in different circumstances, 20 CV is going to be better, and in other circumstances, the 8CR 13 MOV is going to be better. But anyways, we're kind of getting off track here. It's all connected, though. It's a lot of the same stuff that I talk about in every single video that I do. There's simply more that goes into the knife, right, then, how durable is it? Me being somebody who has handled hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of knives, ranging from $5 all the way up to about $3,000, there are different things that I appreciate in the construction of a knife. I think enough durability is important to me. I don't want to pay a lot of money for a lock that is excessively delicate, right? But is a liner lock good enough, no matter what the price of the knife is? Sure. There are plenty of knives that are really expensive that just use a liner lock. Is a compression lock good enough? Sure. Is the plunge lock on an automatic knife good enough? Yeah. Frame lock? Yeah, sure. It's all good enough, right? There are other elements that people will pay for when it comes to their knife, because a lot of those people know, and believe it or not, those people who are paying lots and lots of money for knives, They actually, a lot of them do go out and use them. People always have a hard time believing that. Well, who's really going out and using their $400 knife? A crap load of people. Oh my gosh, it doesn't take, it doesn't take much to, you can throw a rock in any direction on the internet, at least the knife portion of the internet, and find lots of evidence of people who go out and use their really expensive knives, right? Define really expensive how you will. But, yeah. Don't get caught up in the whole durability of the lock thing, right? If there's a widespread issue with a certain type of lock, like there was with a certain company a while back, but we seem to have gotten past it, so I'm not going to light that fire, then the community will generally bring it to other people's attention, right? The irony with that situation is that it actually was an issue, but because of the way that 99% of the people were using their knives, the issue did not surface for them. So while I do agree that it was something that needed to be fixed, it's proving my point, right? We buy stuff because of the idea of performance, right? A lot of people who buy exotic sports cars, they're not taking them out and racing them. They're putting them in their garage and just enjoying them for their potential performance, which I completely understand. That's exactly what I could do if I could afford a Lamborghini. I'd probably cruise around in it, but am I going to go race it? Hell no. I'm going to put that thing in my garage and just enjoy it, right? That's what people are doing with a lot of their knives, is just enjoying them and using them for simple, light cutting tasks, which is fine, right? There are people who go out and beat on things really, really hard, and those are the people who figured out, hey, the geometry, needs to be fixed. And I agree, I'm not saying that it didn't need to be, right? But the vast majority of this population simply does not need that excess durability. We do deserve a functional lock, right? A good functional lock that is doing exactly what it is intended to do, right? The geometry, in the case of a frame lock or a liner lock, the geometry is correct. In the case of, like an Axis style lock, that bar is sliding all the way up behind the tang and locking it securely. The only thing that I look for, really the only thing that I'm asking for when it comes to the lock on a knife is the lock secure? Is there up and down play? Is there side to side play, right? Am I able to put a reasonable amount of force on this knife or on the blade in any direction and not have that lock fail? If that's the case, the lock is fine. So, how important is lock strength? It's important, but it's nowhere near as important as some people make it out to be. The answer to everybody's problem with knives, or whatever they think their issue is, right? There's always going to be somebody jumping in going, "Try it, lock! It's the best lock! Everything else is irrelevant!" No, that's not true. It's just somebody who bought, 3 cold steel knives and was like, this is obviously the best. Cold Steel has great marketing, and their lock definitely is strong. It is probably the strongest lock out there. But once again, for probably the 20th time on my channel, there's so much else out there for you guys to enjoy. Those of you who are coming into this world for the first time, not really knowing anything, don't jump on that wagon. It's okay to explore Cold Steel. They got some great stuff. Don't jump on that wagon. Explore. Most locks are fine. Most locks will be just fine. The truth is that I could get by in an EDC sense with a knife that doesn't even lock. Most of the stuff that I do with a pocket knife, and most of the stuff that you guys do with pocket knives, you could get by with a Victorinox that doesn't even lock. A slip joint, right? I do think it's important to have a locking knife, right? If you live in an area where that is legal. Obviously, this entire video is kind of excluding people who live in areas where it's like locking knives aren't even legal, right? But yeah, there are locks that are weaker and stronger than other locks, right? But for most of what you're gonna do with your knife, as long as you're not doing anything stupid that would just require a more, a tool that was made specifically for that purpose, right? Using a knife for what it should be used for, most locks are gonna be just fine. Think about what it is you're gonna do with your knife. It's the same thing that I've always said, when it comes to steel, right? Buy what you want to buy. Pay for the elements of the knife that make you happy, whether or not it's, oh, my voice cracked. I'm 33. What's wrong with me? But if you're into the whole, U.S. manufacturing and high-end materials thing, right? You like flippers, right? In combination with frame lock, you like that smooth action. If those types of elements are important to you, then spending money on them will make you happy, and the lock on it will be just fine. If the only thing that is important to you is the fact that the knife is a tool that can cut, right, efficiently, and the materials are durable enough, right, and the materials are good enough for what you're going to use it for, right, but you want to make sure that the locking system allows the knife to be used for a wide variety of different things. Whether or not you'll actually use them for those things, right? If that's an entirely separate point to you, whatever, it's just those things that are important to you. All right, well, again, here's your answer right here. Cold Steel SR1 Light for 60 bucks. You can go around lighting fires in as many comment sections as you want, but it doesn't change the fact that there are justifications for any type of lock with any type of person, right? Those of you who have been watching my channel for a long time will find that conclusion frustrating. Because I know you guys want me to tell you what the best lock is. And I don't really... It's like the last time I did the similar video to this, I don't really have a best lock. I have, you know, like there's... All of these locks will work for me. I just have the ones that I think are the most easy to manipulate. That's what I realized it came down to for me was... Which ones are the most easy to manipulate? Because I'm just trying to get the knife out and get the job done, right? So, Spyderco compression lock, bam, cut, whip it shut, put it in your pocket. I'm done. Let me do the same thing with a triad lock. Cut. Right? It's just clunky. It's slower. So that's great that it's strong. But if I'm just trying to, you know, cut something open real quick, then it's just kind of, it's a few extra movements, right? I like these locks and these knives that are easy to manipulate with one hand, right? Depends on who you are and what you want. It just, you need to figure out exactly what's important to you and experiencing more and more and more things, right? If you've only purchased a few cold steel knives, that's your first venture into the higher end part of the knife world, right? Then that's probably where your opinion's gonna lie, right? If you've gone out and used a cold steel knife for something a little bit excessive, right? And you're like, this must be the best. You know, you need to experience more. Find out what else it is you prefer besides maybe lock strength. Maybe you'll find out like me that lock strength really wasn't all that excessive lock strength really wasn't all that important to you. There are so many other elements out there that you can enjoy, and a lot of this stuff can be had for a lot of money, and a lot of it can be had for not a lot of money, right? So, different value systems, different walks of life. We're all different people. We all have different requirements. Use our knives for different things. Nobody's necessarily right or wrong, right? Including me. I'm just a guy talking into a electronic rectangle that's connected to the internet, so all of you guys can sit here for 26 minutes and listen to me ramble. But I like to do this, and apparently you guys like to watch it. So, anyways, guys, I think that's going to be it. Oh man, I breathed so hard it blew my Instagram plug all over the place. Okay, guys, be sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Like I said, a lot of this stuff can be found at the retailers listed down in the description. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do of course have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check that out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.